Hey Raghunath, tell everyone about our Patreon community.
Sure, Kaustubha. The Wisdom of the Sages Patreon community is an incredible online yoga resource. If you like the type of yoga wisdom and culture we share on the show, then our Patreon community is a great next step. This is a listener-supported podcast, and any level of sponsorship will unlock a wide range of live and archived classes, talks, and even workshops.
Raghunath teaches, I teach, and we have a host of other excellent teachers on topics ranging from yoga philosophy, asana classes, storytelling, Ayurveda, kirtan, cooking, meditation, and a lot more.
We even have an incredible online Bhakti 12-step recovery group.
So if you want to check it out, go to patreon.com/wisdom of the sages.
All right, let's get it on.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Live from Super Soul Farm. This is Wisdom of the Sages, a daily yoga podcast with your host, Raghunath, and co-host and senior educator at the Bhakti Center in New York, Kaustubha Das. Welcome to the show, and welcome to Walk On, what day? It's Makeover Monday.
Makeover Monday. Sounds like Allergy Monday for Raghunath.
It's Allergy Monday. It's Ragweed Monday with Raghunath. My stuffy skull. We had a great teacher training weekend, and then it was me and Bridget's anniversary, so we went out to dinner. And
Congrats. How many years?
16 years.
All right.
16 years, and next month it'll be the anniversary of us starting dating. It's quite exciting. What a great weekend we had. Anyway, if you're new to the show, welcome. Makeover Monday is sort of like our check-in day with where we're at, with who we are and what we want to be. And, we sort of try to, every week, put aside some goals for us to attain. And sometimes we fail, and sometimes we do good. And, we make a little list of this is what I want to do this week, and this is what I want to cut out, this is what I want to add. And we have a whole thread for our Patreon members that we talk about it. So if you have a makeover and you're a Patreon member, you can write it on the Makeover Monday thread and just, there's something nice about just putting it out to the world. This week, I'm going to do this. And there's some just like friendly and loving accountability. And we talk about community and accountability and how important it is. For example, I really didn't want to wake up this morning, as you can see. I'm still a little half dreaming right now. But, there's accountability. You got to wake up when I don't want to wake up, and it's good. It just makes you show up. And there's something about showing up when you don't want to show up that's very important. So thank you for the accountability. Cheers.
Thank you for waking up.
Oh, it was a double snooze day. The snooze demon got me twice. Snooze Davy. We are going to read a great letter from Lyra, but we're going to save that. But Lyra Judo's got a good story because she's one of these girls like Erica, who's on the show a long time ago at Kavali. She was a young teenager, like 16 years old, and she was living in the Philly Temple. And now she's 20 plus years later, and she's joined us on the show. So she's got a good story, so we wanted to share that. But let's get into where the Bhagavatam is, where we are at the Bhagavatam. Anything you want to share, Kaustubha? I'd like that photo of you and me that you posted.
Yeah, well, I want to talk to you about that.
Privately or publicly?
I mean, in other words, I think it may be time to change our branding a little bit and use a photo like that as our main image, but we could talk about that separately. But Tatiana, she's a great photographer, or Thakurani, I should say.
Thakurani, yes.
Yeah, she is Thakurani. Yeah. Have you looked at all the photos?
No, I didn't know you sent me all. I just thought you sent me that one.
Oh, I haven't sent you the link. I'll send you the link.
Okay.
But yeah, as you were in that interview we did yesterday, you were saying how it was like this super hot day when you came over. So we did that photo shoot on that day, and especially the ones we did indoors, we look all. Especially I look really sweaty, like it was so hot, you know.
You were transcendental. I was sweaty, complaining, bitching, crying, moaning, taking off my shirt, wringing it off, complaining.
You were like
complaining about everything.
Enthusiasm that day. Raghu, he's like one of these guys, like, you know, a photographer's dream is, like, you know, like they try to get you to be animated or whatever. He was like nonstop. You're singing one song after another. You're doing Bohemian Rhapsody. You did you did a whole series of show tunes. Then we got on the roof of my building and he broke into the Jeffersons theme.
Well, you live on the Upper East Side. It was the Jeffersons was perfect.
Yeah. No, I appreciated how it was so apropos. You were really on it that day.
Thank you, Prabhu. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to hang with you. I was talking about yesterday my Gunas class. I give a class on the Gunas. Me and my daughter went to visit Kaustubha, and it was so funny. We were talking about Sattva Guna. It's like, yeah, Kaustubha's totally in Sattva Guna. We went over there to his apartment, me and my daughter, and it was like 100 degrees in the apartment, and he's very calm. He's rocking in his chair. Me and my daughter are going, it's so hot. He's like, welcome. And then his wife is also incredibly sattvic. Welcome, Raghunath.
It's all her credit, actually.
She's like, please. If that was, first of all, it's like an 800 square foot apartment, so the whole thing.
It's less than 800 square feet. It's
less than 800 square feet. There's like not one thing out of place. I mean, if you could just see my desk, or to speak of the rest of my life, everything is like meticulously in place. And then his wife is like, sit down. Would you like a meal? And even the plate is organized perfectly, like not one grain of rice out of. Me and my daughter are just sitting there. We're just like sweating, sitting there, and these guys are just calm, rocking in their chairs. But even before that, because your wife Gita was saying, because 1/3 of his apartment is this giant, almost like a Broadway stage of an.
You're exaggerating.
This curtain where you open it up and it's like the deities behind this apartment.
That's it right there. That's not 1/3 of the apartment.
It's 1/3 of the apartment, that little apartment. But anyway, my daughter's like, oh, cool, the deities. Can we see the deities? And Gita was like, the deities are taking a nap right now, but very soon. They're on schedule. You can see them. And then before we ate, of course, she brings all the food to the altar and offers all the food. And then she does all these very beautiful prayers. And my daughter puts her arm on my shoulder and says, after watching Gita, we got to up our deity game at home.
Wow. From the mouths of babes.
We got to up our deity game.
But all the credit goes to my wife. She's like, she keeps the place spotless, and she finds her happiness in service. You know, that's the consciousness we're supposed to come to. That's the real happiness.
Well, you were our poster boy in my Gunas class for the mode of goodness.
Yeah, you guys made me one, but
yeah, we were saying that we were singing the Addams Family theme song, but the Sattvic family did it. Kaustubha did it. Gita. So let's dive into the Srimad Bhagavatam, and maybe it'll rub off on me.
It's exciting because we start a new chapter today.
Yes.
Chapter 18. We're wrapping up the first canto. We're 7 months in, and we're starting to wrap up the canto. We got 2 more chapters left.
That's very exciting.
And the really great chapters. Love this stuff.
Yeah. All right. Let's start with our magical invocation. Nārāyaṇam namaskritya naram chaiva narottama devim saraswatim vyasam tojayam mudirayet. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, one should first offer obeisances to the Supreme Lord Narayan, unto Nārāyaṇa Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and to Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta Prayesh Vabhadreshu Nityam Bhagavat Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki. By regular attendance in classes in the Bhagavatam, all that is troublesome to the heart will be eradicated, and loving service to the Supreme Lord, who is praised with devotional songs, will be established as an irrevocable fact. Om Jnanatamurandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Reading from the first canto, chapter 16, text. What text are we on?
18.
Chapter 18, text 1.
Chapter 18. Where am I?
118, 1.
Oh, that's right. And the name of the chapter is Maharaj Parikshit, cursed by a Brahmin boy. Sounds exciting.
What's the Brahmin boy's name?
The Brahmin boy's name? Oh, his name is Shringi.
There you go.
Shringi. Alrighty. Sutta Goswami is speaking. Ready?
Yeah.
Sri Sutta Goswami said, due to the mercy of the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, who acts wonderfully, Maharaj Parikshit, though struck by the weapon of the son of Drona in his mother's womb, could not be burned. So we know that story that there was a weapon thrown at the when he was in the womb. The weapon was thrown at her belly, and Krishna protected him from that weapon, and that's where his first darshan with the Lord was. In the womb, the Lord appeared and protected him.
Yeah, we read about that earlier. So now we have Sutta Goswami speaking to the sages in Naimisharanya. The chapter kind of like, okay, now that chapter ended, we go back to the original narrator in the book, Sutta speaking to the sages in Naimisharanya. And he's just kind of summarizing a bit of what he said already about Maharaj Parikshit, who's, again, is going to be such an important character, because these next few chapters are all about him, and as some of the previous chapters were, and then he meets his guru, Shukadeva Goswami, at the very end of the next chapter, and then second canto on is all his questions to Shukadeva Goswami.
By the way, I somehow made the intro to the whole thing all about me today, but yesterday was a great interview with Kaustubha Day. If you missed it, go back and check out our episode on interview day. But Kaustubha was the person we interviewed, and it was really good. I really enjoyed the show. Wasn't that good, Mara?
Yeah, it was great.
Thinking about Kaustubha, poking him around, and finding out what makes him. It was nice. I could have gone on much longer, and there were some good questions. But
We'll do it again next year or something like that.
yeah, it was nice.
I could do you someday now too.
You already did me.
Well, that was with
Everybody knows
Parmananda,
my
though.
story.
Huh?
Everybody knows my story.
Not all the details.
I don't think we want the details. The devil's in the details. Furthermore, Maharaj Parikshit was always consciously surrendered to the personality of Godhead, and therefore he was neither afraid nor overwhelmed by fear due to the snake bird, which was to bite him because of the fury of the Brahmin boy.
Okay.
Did you see
Now-
that picture I posted about a flying snake?
I don't think I did.
There is this Southeast Asian snake that flies through the trees. I wonder if it was
Oh,
that.
I've seen those before. Yeah, I've seen
They
those.
like can launch themselves from trees. I don't know if they actually fly, but they can jump. Like,
Yeah, and they kind of swivel in a way that they kind of.
I wonder if that's what it was.
No, I don't think. Well, at least that's not the way Prabhupada instructed them to paint it, but it's more like a snake, a winged bird, winged snake, dragon kind of thing,
Oh, it could have been a dragon. There's this whole thing about dragons.
I bet there is.
It's like the Nagaloka, the planet of the snakes.
Yeah.
Right, and they call them nagas, but they're also described as dragon-like. And then you have these places like China where they worship dragons, or it's a big part of what's the word, Mara? Iconography. Is that a word?
Iconography.
Iconography. You'll see yeah, it's Naga worship. We should have a Naga class one day.
Maybe someday we will. But well, there's some chance to talk about it here. But, a couple months back, we read from Mahabharata about this subject here, right? That that Maharaj Pariksit got cursed by the Brahmin boy. He's in a state of kind of exhaustion, and he was kind of off his game. Maharaj Pariksit had been wandering in the forest for a long time. He was kind of wiped out. He came upon a sage who was sitting in meditation, but in his state, Maharaj Pariksit didn't really get it, and he asked him for some water. He was exhausted with hunger and thirst, and the sage was in meditation, didn't respond. And Maharaj Pariksit was like, well, here I am, I'm your king, but even if I'm not, I'm this person out here, like just trying to get a drink, and you're ignoring me. So he reached down with his bow, and he picked up a body of a dead snake, and he placed it around the sage like it was a garland. And then he moved on, and he later regretted it. But when the son of that sage, who was had mystic power, but not the depth of spiritual maturity, the sage himself, he woke up, he didn't, no big deal, no offense. But his son became really infuriated, and he cursed Maharaj Pariksit to die. Now, when the sage heard about that, he just said, we need to tell the king, that he's been cursed to die in 7 days by the bite of the snake bird. And then how Maharaj Pariksit reacted to that, also without any anger. Maharaj Pariksit and the sage, they were both took no offense. They just respected each other. They just wanted to help each other. And so that we can talk more about that as this comes out, but I really like the commentary on this verse. And it says again, furthermore, Maharaj Pariksit was always consciously surrendered to the personality of Godhead. What's the phrase used here? It says he was Bhagavati Arpita Ashayaha. He had the Ashaya, the consciousness of being Arpita, surrendered to Bhagavati, to God. And therefore he had no fear, right? The word here, bhayat, fear, he had no fear, even though he was going to be bit by some big, huge flying snake, right?
Could have been a small flying snake. Didn't mention big. Tiny little.
I'm talking about the painting. I've seen the painting, and he's big. He's big. He's a big flying snake. So here's the
which almost makes it worse. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, I'd rather get
a little
get
flying
small
snake,
one. Yeah.
But it's poisonous. Disgusting. The wings hitting you.
Like big bat wings.
Like this, like in India, there are these bats. You ever seen bats?
Yeah.
Like,
where you see those bats? Did you remember on the Navadvip Parikrama? There's a place where Lord Shiva is underneath the water.
Har Har Mahadev.
Yeah, Har Har Kshetra, and those, they call them flying foxes.
I kid you not. But they're also in Vrindavan too. These bats. I have a secret. They're all around the Shiva temples.
Well,
there's this secret Shiva temple I go to in Vrindavan that no one knows about. It's very close. There's all these gigantic trees, and these I just go there before I leave, and I pray on these trees, and I sit there and I'm looking up, and there are these massive bats flying around, and there's hundreds of them. Yeah. And if you were to see them, it's almost like this like Dracula movie, because they're so big.
They're big. Yeah.
They're big, man. But bats are good. Bats have bad raps. I have a bat box at my house to attract bats.
Really?
Yeah, because they eat all bad insects that drive you crazy.
All right. So now here's the commentary. A self-surrendered devotee of the Lord is called nārāyaṇa-parāyaṇa. Right? One surrendered to the Lord Narayan, to Lord Vishnu. Nārāyaṇa-parāyaṇa.
Nārāyaṇa-parāyaṇa. That'd be a good initiated name. Nārāyaṇa-parāyaṇa.
Your name is Nārāyaṇa-parāyaṇa. There's probably one out there.
I'm sure there is.
So a self-surrendered devotee of the Lord is called Narayan.
Your name is Kaustubha Baluba.
All right, there you go. Have your fun. Have your fun. Right? A self-surrendered devotee of the Lord is called Nārāyaṇa-parāyaṇa. Such a person is never afraid of any place or person, not even death. Now, in saying that, Prabhupada is alluding to a verse which I want to read, but let's continue. Okay. For him, nothing is as important as the Supreme Lord,
and thus he gives equal importance to heaven and hell, right? He sees them the same. He knows well that both heaven and hell are creations of the Lord, and similarly, life and death are different conditions of existence created by the Lord. But in all conditions and in all circumstances, remembrance of Nārāyaṇa is essential, whether I'm in heaven, whether I'm in hell. The nārāyaṇa-parāyaṇa practices this constantly. Maharaj Pariksit was such a pure devotee. He was wrongfully cursed by an inexperienced son of a Brahmana who was under the influence of Kali. And Maharaj Pariksit took this to be sent by Narayan, right? Someone cursed him, although he didn't deserve it, really bad curse. But rather than getting upset with the cursor, he saw this as all God's working through this. He knew that Narayana, Lord Krishna, had saved him when he was burned in the womb of his mother. And if he were to be killed by a snake bite, it would also take place by the will of the Lord. The devotee never goes against the will of the Lord, although anything sent by God is a blessing for the devotee. Therefore, Maharaj Pariksit was neither afraid of nor bewildered by such things. That is a sign of a pure devotee of the Lord. Okay, so now let's go back to this phrase, nārāyaṇa-parāyaṇa. Do you know the verse he's alluding to here?
I don't think so.
It's a beautiful verse. It is found in Canto 6, chapter 17, I believe. Yeah, 17. Nārāyaṇa-parasarve nakutas-chanya bibhyati svarga apavarga narkeshu apitulyartha darshana. And find the translation for that. Devotees solely engaged in the devotional service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, those fully engaged in Bhakti Yoga, never fear any condition of life. For them, the heavenly planets, liberation, and the hellish planets are all the same. For such devotees are interested only in the service of the Lord. Right? Svarga, which means the heavens, Apavarga, liberation, Narkeshu, or even hell. Right? Apitulyartha, the nakutas-chanya bibhyati, they have no fear. Apitulyartha darshana, they see them as the same. Right? And this is the vision of the sage, that I'm not shaken by external things. Regardless of what the external is like, I'm situated in the same consciousness internally. And do you know the story behind that verse? How it comes up in the Bhagavatam?
Please do tell.
It's a great story.
Before you hit the story, I just want to share with some people, because if you're new to this, the Vedic paradigm does speak about, you just mentioned hell. So sometimes that triggers people, like, hell, what kind of weird religion thing? I grew up with heaven and hell, and that whole thing was like, they held it over my head to make me do whatever I wanted. The idea of hell is it's a place like Earth, and there's not one hell, there's many, many hells, and just like there's many, many heavens, like the swargas, but they're temporary places where you do time. Because if hell is eternal, then God is not merciful. It's like, let the crime let the punishment fit the crime.
What a cruel and unusual punishment.
Yeah, God is not loving. He's like a sadist. But the idea is that the whole material universe, higher planets, middle planets, lower planets, they're meant for our own personal resurrection, for our own personal reformation. They're not just there to, go to your room forever, just like out of some like sadistic God. But the whole material world is here just to learn our lessons. And depending on how you behave, just like depending on how I behave today, that's going to affect my tomorrow. So depending on how you be, and even in this world, you can see it. Suppose you're born with a lot of money. What you do with your money is going to affect your next reaction or your karma. And you could use it in a horrible way. You could use it in an upgrading way or a degrading way. What you do in poverty is going to affect you, and what you do in a horrible situation, or how I react to some tragic situation in my life, that's going to affect my future choices. What to speak of higher planets or lower planets. So we are on this game of choices and then reactions and this karma, and what we choose creates our next life and our future karmas, so to speak. So when we speak of a hell, it's not the hell like we envision in a Judeo-Christian context where, oh, you didn't surrender to Jesus, you're eternally damned. It's always like, really? What if I was born in the year 2000, or in the year, the year one, according to the Christian calendar, and I was born in Osaka, Japan? Because I never met Jesus, I'm going to go to hell forever? Come on, give me a break. Or what about Moses? He never met Jesus. He's got to go to hell? Or Abraham. So there's this idea of like, if you didn't surrender to Jesus at that time, then it's over. Hell eternally. You got to let the crime fit, or the punishment fit the crime. And so I just feel like the concept of hell and heaven, how it's taught, is like a limited, partial truth. And I hope that cleared it up.
So in other words, these are all temporary situations in the material realm.
Just like ours is now. We're in a some of us are in a temporary great situation, and then there's massive reversals, and there's a temporary miserable situation. And even if it seems like it's going on for years, it's still temporary.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay.
Now, tell that good story, sir.
So here's the story that this comes up in the 6th canto of the Bhagavatam, that there's a king named Citraketu. Now, what goes on after this story is one of the most incredible stories. After, you see, it's another curse, and it's another curse that really wasn't really deserved, but it was another undeserved curse where it's another king, but not a regular king, right? This is a Rajarshi, like a sage king. The way that he responds to it is on such an elevated level. And so Citraketu, it said that he was flying around in an airplane. Right now, this isn't the kind of, you can't picture the kind of airplanes that we have now, but it was some kind of flying vehicle, right? That they talk about, in higher planets. Yep. and he's flying around, floating around, hovering around, and he's looking down and he sees Lord Shiva, and Lord Shiva is speaking to some of his followers. In a similar way that, like a guru speaks to disciples, his guru sitting on a higher seat and he's got his students around him. But there's something very unusual, something out of the ordinary, is that his wife, Parvati, is sitting on his lap as he's speaking to these students. Now that's a little strange, right? That's like, normally, when the speaker of the Shastra, the wisdom, whatever, is speaking, they don't have their wife sitting on their lap. That's something that's more reserved for private times.
Yes.
So Citraketu, who's a dear friend of Lord Shiva, he makes a joke about this, but it was a joke that was like entirely with appreciation and love for Lord Shiva, but it was still, like, hey, this is unusual, right? Now Parvati, Lord Shiva's wife, when she heard that joke, she did not appreciate it. Right? She did not appreciate it. And she cursed Citraketu to become a demon, right? To be born in a demon body, Now, nobody wants that, right? Citraketu could have been like, whoa, hold it. I've got this nice life where I can fly around in airplanes and be a king. And now I'm being cursed to become this demonic creature. Now I'm going to read not all the verses, but some of the verses from this section. And these verses really highlight that when one is in an elevated state of consciousness, when one is really connected to God, that they can move through this world under any conditions and interpret them in a way that's even-minded, and they can be peaceful and fearless under any condition. It's something that we all need to learn as our world goes through craziness, right? We need to learn to pass through this with an even mind. And so this is text 16, and I'll read some more. I won't read all the verses from this section, but I'll kind of just read some highlights. Text 16 said, Sri Shukadev Goswami continued, "My dear King Parikshit, when Citraketu was cursed by Parvati, he descended from his airplane, bowed down before her with great humility,
and he pleased her completely. He was just got cursed by her. He could have been, what are the three ugly brothers?
Blame, criticize, and complain.
Yeah. And he didn't do any of that. Rather, he spoke to her in a way that pleased her. After getting cursed by her, he could have complained, he could have blamed, this isn't fair. But he spoke from a whole nother level. Citraketu said, "My dear mother, with my own hands folded together, I accept the curse upon me. I do not mind the curse, for happiness and distress are given by the demigods as a result of one's past deeds." Right? If you're throwing this curse on me, it must be something that I deserved. He's seeing on that deeper level. Deluded by ignorance, the living entity wanders in the forest of this material world, enjoying the happiness and distress resulting from his past deeds everywhere and at all times. Now in text 20, he says, this material world resembles the waves of a constantly flowing river. Okay, this is the way a wise person, a sage, is seeing this world. This material world resembles the waves of a constantly flowing river. Therefore, what is a curse and what is a favor? Mm-hmm. Right? They come and they go, they flow, right? The material world is flowing from this is nice to this is not so nice. This is nice and this is not so nice. The material world resembles the waves of a constantly flowing river. Therefore, what is a curse and what is a favor? What are the heavenly planets and what are the hellish planets? What is actually happiness and what is actually distress? Because the waves flow constantly, none of them has an eternal effect. Then in text 24, it says, "O mother, you are now unnecessarily angry, but since all my happiness and distress are destined by my past activities, I do not plead to be excused or relieved from your curse. Although what I have said is not wrong, please let whatever you think is wrong be pardoned." Then Sri Shukadev Goswami continued, "O King Parikshit, subduer of the enemy, after Citraketu satisfied Lord Shiva and his wife Parvati, he boarded his airplane and left as they looked on. When Lord Shiva and Parvati saw that Citraketu, although informed of the curse, was unafraid, they smiled, being fully astonished by his behavior. Thereafter, in the presence of the great sage Narada, the demons, the inhabitants of Siddhaloka and his personal associates, Lord Shiva, who is most powerful, spoke to his wife Parvati while they all listened." Okay, so this curse just went down. This friendly joke happened. The curse came down. Citraketu responds with such not only humility, but wisdom.
Radical responsibility.
Yeah. Okay. And so then Lord Shiva, now he's going to, and it's said that all these people were gathered there. Narada was there, all different kind of people were there. And this is what he says. Lord Shiva says, "My dear beautiful Parvati, have you seen the greatness of the Vaishnavas, right, of the devotees of Lord Vishnu, being servants of the servants?" The term here is Britya Brityanam, being servants of the servants of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari. They are great souls and are not interested in any kind of material happiness. Why? Because they have spiritual happiness from within, right? Now here's the verse. Devotees solely engaged in the devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayan, never fear any condition of life. For them, the heavenly planets, liberation, and the hellish planets are all the same. For such devotees are interested only in the service of the Lord. Now, this verse is important on so many levels. One thing that's being indicated here is when he says that Svarga Apavarga Nardakeshu, whether it mentions heaven and hell, but it also mentions liberation, right? That goal that the Jnani yogis are working so hard for and renouncing and all that level of consciousness, which is more elaborated on in previous books like the Upanishads, that many yogis see as the ultimate goal. Here it's saying that for the bhakta, for the devotee of Narayana, that liberation is unimportant to them as well. That's not at all seen as the highest goal. What's the highest goal? Simply to be with pure love, to be connected with God. And when you're there, then even liberation, heaven, hell, they're all the same. So here's Prabhupada's commentary to this verse. All right. Parvati might naturally have inquired how devotees become so exalted. Therefore, this verse explains that they are nārāyaṇa-para, simply dependent on Narayana, simply dependent on God. They do not mind reverses in life because in the service of Narayana, they have learned to tolerate whatever hardships there may be. They do not care whether they're in heaven or in hell. They simply engage in the service of the Lord. This is their excellence, right? This is the excellence of a yogi, that if externally things are pleasant or if externally things are unpleasant, they remain steady. They have faith and they have happiness from within. Then Prabhupada alludes to another verse that's from the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Anukulyena Krishna Anushilanam. They are liberally engaged in the service of the Lord, and therefore they are excellent. By using the word Britya Brityanam, servants of the servants, Lord Shiva pointed out that although Citraketu provided one example of tolerance and excellence, all the devotees who have taken shelter of the Lord as eternal servants are glorious. They have no eagerness to be happy by being placed in the heavenly planets, becoming liberated, or becoming one with Brahman, the supreme effulgence. These benefits do not appeal to their minds. They're simply interested in giving direct service to the Lord. I mentioned earlier about my wife, right? I said she's found her happiness in service, right? This is the consciousness that we could say Bhagavatam is directing us towards, but when we say Bhagavatam, it means that all the yoga literature is building towards this. So it's all meant to bring us to this point where we're even-minded amongst the externals, connected internally, and therefore also fearless as we move through these difficult times in life. What do you have to say about that, Raghu?
Agree with it all. The last point you made was really interesting, that all the yogic literature, because there's so many yogic literatures, and I remember there's one book by Prabhupada called Krishna Consciousness, the Topmost Yoga System. Mm-hmm. And someone might initially say, well, come on, you're just favoring your yoga system. Mm-hmm. But if you actually study them in an ecumenical or like a broad-minded way, that first of all, there's this whole concept of, and we were studying this in the Guna class yesterday, how just to get to sattva, there's a lot of like people you'll meet in India, they're just like sattvic, they're almost like not of this world, they're sort of floating around. And then there's like these people that you read in the Bhagavatam, or there's mystics. And we told so many stories about mystics or people who have cities.
I bet you did.
Don't blame me. They asked about ghosts.
Okay.
I had to go down that trail. But then they, then there's people who just practice yoga. When I say yoga, I'm not talking about, Yoga Works, Los Angeles. I'm talking about like traditional yoga systems. They practice yoga just to develop some mystical power. They don't care about, a lot of these yogis in these ashrams in India, they don't care about physical therapy. They care about developing a mystic city. And and they invest their whole life in it. And then there's people who actually want to go to just higher material planets with their yoga practice because they realize like, well, life is tough here and I'd rather be on a higher planet, or mystical things where they can leave their body. And then there's people who are like the sages of Namasharanya or Gyanis, who are just sort of like, they're not of this world. They're just not of this world, and they're liberated souls. And then there's the bhaktas, who are just not only not of this world, but they want to relish relationship with Krishna. So the idea, we say this analogy a lot, like the sun globe and the sunshine are not different. Is God personal or impersonal? God is both. But in bhakti, we're concentrating on the globe, the source of even the light. And it's refined because above just being free from pain is transcendental relationship and because there's a sweetness. And this isn't us just saying because ours is the best. This is just how it's described in the Vedas. Like people, jnanis, end up giving up that position because they fall in love with this like deep, deep sweetness of a bhakti rasa, or a relationship in bhakti. And so they have a focus on their Ishta, or the Krishna or Ram or Lord Vishnu. And his Krishna bhakti is even more intimate because Krishna has all these other pastimes where he's not just beautiful and noble and courageous. He's like charming and naughty and silly and he's a prankster. And it just brings about this whole nother level of your heart. And so it's not just one brand's take on the yoga system. It is everything. Even and there's a lot of places in the Vedas that teach you, how to use mantras for wealth and or mantras for healing. But this is mantras for like almost like being in this world, but really not of this world. And so that's the current behind all this, that there's a loving, beneficial force, a benevolent force that's drawing us closer to a relationship. And that's what it means by the topmost yoga system. It's not anything of this world. It's not, and the Bhagavatam comes right out of the gate saying this. It's not the Dharma projita kaitavatra. It's not this Dharma just for the sake of being righteous. And it's not using Dharma and all your religious activities just to get something from God, where we call it sort of metaphysical Amazon Prime, where you're praying for stuff or doing pujas for some benediction. We just want service, and in that service, and as you were reading in those commentaries, it's like the devotee doesn't care if they're in heaven or hell. And I'm sure in your situation, like sometimes when you were a monk, you get this situation where you're like in some beautiful place and like this is incredible, and then sometimes you've been in some very tough places. Even when we were in the ashram in Philadelphia, remember it was like freezing out and they'd like run out of heat, and we'd go to the morning program. I remember going to the morning program in our sleeping bag. It was so cold. And we still took cold showers. So sometimes you're not in a place you want to be, and sometimes it's like we're in paradise, but the devotee just wants to serve. And in that desire, all I want to do is serve, you're already liberated.
Right.
You feel like, because
more than liberated.
Yeah.
That's the point, is that the Bhagavatam is the same author who wrote the religious Vedas, 4 Vedas you could say, and wrote, like you could say, the spiritual Upanishads and all that. But the Bhagavatam is what takes it to its fullest completion. Like it has all these stories that are just illustrating this in such far ways that go beyond the externals and go to the deepest essence. So what happens with this King Citraketu is he does take birth as a demon, right? But as a demon, he's in the body of a demon and having to play the role of a demon. But and he's like this massive giant, like warrior, fiery warrior. And he has to fight Lord Indra, who's like kind of the head of the religion department in the universe, in a sense, right? He's like, the king of heaven, kind of like the defender of religious principles and all of that. And he's got to fight Indra. And he's telling Indra, hey, stand up and fight me. Let's go, but in doing so, he begins to speak about the glories of the Lord. And as Indra's fighting him, Indra's realizing this demon who's fighting is actually a better devotee than me. Right? He's like this. So the Bhagavatam is always showing that externals aren't important. It's no matter what, if one is connected and has devotion in their heart, they're the most exalted. And that happens in many ways. And that's why right off the bat, we hear about Maharaj Parikshit getting cursed. He's not disturbed by the curse because he's connected on a spiritual level. Later on, we hear about Citraketu. He's not disturbed by the curse. Citraketu is going to go on. You want to hear just a few more verses of what he has to say?
Yeah, it's good stuff.
He says, because the actions of the Supreme Lord's external energy, the material energy, the living entities are conditioned. They become programmed by it. They become conditioned in contact with material bodies. The dualities of happiness and distress, birth, death, curses, and favors are natural byproducts of this contact in the material world. In other words, our mind is a computer,
And due to the experience that comes through our senses, our mind gets programmed thinking, this is good, this is bad. This will make me happy, this won't, right? This is heaven, this is hell. This is a curse, this is a favor, this is a blessing. It's just, he's saying that it's material programming. And because we get programmed that way, due to the externals, we respond. This is called the manas. It's the part of the mind that responds. It doesn't contemplate. It's programmed to respond. Oh, that will make me happy. Oh, that won't. That's attractive. That's unattractive. This is good. This is bad. It's programming. He goes on to say, as one mistakenly considers a flower garland to be a snake, or experiences happiness and distress in a dream, so in the material world, by lack of careful consideration, you know, in other words, we follow the impulsive programming rather than turn to an informed buddhi, the reflective part of the mind, the contemplative part of the mind. So he says, as one mistakenly considers a flower garden to be a snake, or experiences happiness and distress in a dream, so in the material world, by lack of careful consideration, we differentiate between happiness and distress, considering one good and the other bad.
I like these ancient analogies. Oh, a flower,
Snake
like
in the-
flower garland. No. In America, no one, unless you're like in the bhakti thing, you don't even ever see a flower garland unless you live in Hawaii. But I like the how the mind plays tricks. Like sometimes you're just like moving your arm and you'll hit like there's a tag on my shirt or something like that, and I hit it with my hand, and it feels like there's something crawling in my back. You're like, wah! And or you touch something. It could be anything, like a piece of a napkin or something. You think it's like a bug, and so without that knowledge, the mind just tricks you and immediately makes you like freak out about something that's not even real.
Yeah. And so your fear or your comfort is dependent on something external, and you're totally vulnerable to it, right? So like I see a flower garden, but I think it's a snake. Oh my God, I'm in fear.
Or ever walk in the ocean, like in low tide, and you're like, oh! You think when I step on a clam, a jellyfish, well, it's like nothing.
So okay, so let's continue.
He says, persons engaged in devotional service to Lord Vasudeva, Krishna, have naturally perfect knowledge and detachment from this material world. Therefore, such devotees are not interested in so-called happiness or so-called distress of this world. Then he says, neither I, Lord Shiva, nor Brahma, nor the Ashvini Kumaras, nor Narada, who is sitting right there, nor even other great sages who are Brahma's sons, nor even the demigods can understand the pastimes and personality of the Supreme Lord. He's unlimited. Although we are part of the Supreme Lord, we consider ourselves independent, separate controllers, and thus we cannot understand his identity. He holds, now this is the identity of this is the consciousness of Lord Narayan, or of Krishna. And then the next verses are going to describe how the consciousness of the devotee is on a similar level. He holds no one as very dear and no one as inimical. He has no one for his own relative and no one is alien to him. He is actually the soul of all living entities. So it's not because he's the soul of all living entities. He doesn't see, this one I like and this one I don't like. He loves them all. You know? Thus, he is the auspicious friend of all living beings, and he is very near and dear to all of them. Right? He's in the heart of every living being as a dear friend. Now, if that's his consciousness, then that means that's meant to be the consciousness of his devotees as well. So then text 34 and 35. This magnanimous Citraketu is a dear devotee of the Lord. He is equal to all living entities and is free from attachment and hatred. He's not attached to some and hating others. He just got cursed. He came through with the same respect to Parvati as if it was someone who was blessing him, right? Mm-hmm. Similarly, I am also very, very dear to Narayan, Lord Shiva says. Therefore, no one should be astonished to see the activities of the most exalted devotees of Narayan, for they are free from attachment and envy. They are always peaceful, and they're equal to everyone. So here's the translation of that. He says, Tasman na vishmaya karya. Therefore, no one should be astonished to see the activities of Purusheshu Mahatmeshu, people who are greatly exalted souls, right? The Mahatmas, the Mahatmeshu, all the great souls. Mahaparusha Bhakteshu, the devotees of Lord Vishnu. We're all Purusha, spirit or person, but he's the Mahaparusha, the greatest person. And so the Bhakteshu, the devotees of the Mahaparusha, they are Santeshu Samadharshishu. It's all kind of nice poetry, Purusheshu Mahatmashu, Mahaparusha Bhakteshu, Santeshu Samadharshishu. They are always peaceful, Santeshu, and equal to everyone, Samadharshishu. Right? They see everything equally. This is that we're meant to cultivate. It's this even-mindedness and seeing God in everyone, seeing everyone, not having friends and enemies. The ability to move through this world of constantly, like he was saying, it's like a river that's the waves are always shifting, pleasant, unpleasant, pleasant, unpleasant. Because one is so grounded in their faith, ultimately grounded in their love for God, no matter what the external situation is, the devotee moves through it without any fear, and it even doesn't shake their affection for every living being. So when Citraketu was cursed, when Parikshit was cursed, they both responded without any kind of blaming, complaining, or criticizing. They each said, I must have done something in my past to deserve this. Let me go ahead and embrace this reaction that's unpleasant. But because they were so connected to God within the heart, they were able to have an even mind through it. And it's that even-mindedness which facilitates deep spiritual absorption. This is where it goes from beyond religion and goes into deep spirituality. With that even mind, seeing people equally, seeing circumstances equally, you're able to absorb your mind deeply spiritually and transform spiritually. And that's what we're trying to do in the practice of bhakti. That's what the Bhagavad Gita is all about. Bhagavatam is laying it all out there. Good stuff. Good stuff to start the week with, right?
Great stuff. And that's why.
Yeah. What's this?
It's time for hand clapping.
The snapping.
Snapping. Maybe the devotees should start snapping more in their kirtans.
Snapping, one of the most important books on the subject matter. Remember that?
Yeah, snapping. It's like self-help.
That's an inside joke.
I was like, snapping, and now I'm Anyway, thanks everybody joining us on our Makeover Monday. It's a good day. Good way. Thanks for the accountability. Is it inappropriate if I take a nap?
Take a nap. Just try to wrap up the show first.
Yeah, okay. All right. Thanks everybody for your association, for the good company. It's all about good company, isn't it? We need some good company in our lives. And I gotta get rid of some bad company. Gotta get rid of that bad company.
Bad company.
I want people to bring me up, not bring me down.
Can you sing a little Bad Company for us, Raghu?
Huh?
Can you sing a little Bad Company for us?
What's a Bad Company song?
Bad Company till the day I die.